everyone, welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at PTV World, and with me are Farrukh, Pitafi and Faisal. Today's show we're going to be talking about the new policy decisions that have been taken with reference to improving the security situation in the country, particularly involving the illegal foreign nationals residing in Pakistan. A deadline of October 31st has been given, and it has been clarified by the Foreign Office spokesperson that this is something that is not restricted to particular nationality, as perhaps is being viewed by certain quarters as being limited to perhaps only Afghan foreign nationals, and that is something that has been clarified is not true. This is something that Pakistan is doing to curb illegal activity within its own domain, and that is something that because of the way that things have been going on within the country is justified and also is in line with the sovereign laws that apply within Pakistan. This is not something that's going to impact the Afghan refugees that Pakistan has been hosting for quite some time now. This is, of course, in response to a number of criticisms and controversy around this particular policy decision of the Apex Committee meeting, in which these certain actions were outlined. We also know that the foreign ministers of Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban regime have also met in Tibet, in which they spoke about a number of issues, including this particular decision as well. And then, of course, cross-border trade, which has also been clarified is not banned. It's just that the facility is being misused, and Pakistan is concerned about that. And then, of course, the issues with regards to ensuring that the Afghan Taliban regime is able to fulfill its commitment regarding its soil not to be used against any other territory, which also means not providing safe havens for organizations such as the TTP. And this is something, again, that has come under discussion given the way that the security situation in Pakistan has also deteriorated with the Afghan Taliban regime in power, and the kind of expectations and commitments perhaps that are there by the Afghan Taliban regime are not being fulfilled. And so once again, it has been reiterated that there needs to be a collective response from both Pakistan and Afghanistan towards the threat of terrorism within both the countries as well. And so the Afghan Taliban regime needs to step up on that matter. At the same time, we also know just today after this policy decision was announced, we've seen another incident at the Pak-Afghan border at the Chaman crossing that has resulted in two people, including a 12-year-old boy embracing martyrdom and another child being injured. And this is again due to unprovoked and indiscriminate firing at the Chaman border crossing, which is unfortunate. Something similar happened last year as well. And this is again a point that has been raised with the Taliban regime in Afghanistan as to the need to act more responsibly, and that such actions need to be stopped and properly investigated. So we're going to be taking a look at that as well in terms of what we expect and how effectively we can manage our border, and what sort of facilitation, if any, can be provided by the Afghan Taliban regime, and how exactly Pakistan will be able to pursue that internationally. Our next segment is going to take a look at what is going on in the neighborhood in India, where we, of course, know that the much-awaited ICC World Cup has begun, and this is, of course, something that is extremely important to Pakistan and the sport that is viewed by a large number of the people. At the same time, of course, we know that the Pakistan cricket team is going to be playing on Indian soil after a gap of almost 7 years, and so this is a big historic occasion for all of us. And at the same time, unfortunately, there seems to be a lot of issues and restrictions surrounding visa issuance for Pakistani journalists and spectators to go ahead and to be able to witness the match in person and to obviously cover it as well. And so this is something, again, that the Foreign Office has also reiterated is not in line with what Pakistan believes needs to happen, especially in terms of sports being kept out of any sort of political rivalry, and the fact that the due process that is there in terms of Pakistani journalists and spectators being able to go and witness these matches in person needs to be processed, and it should be something that is expedited and given as per the right of these people. So we're going to be taking a look at exactly how this is going to proceed, given the fact that the matches have already begun, and pretty soon Pakistan cricket team will also be playing a match, and whether or not the visa issuance will be done before that. So that is going to be our focus at the end of the show. Of course, Farrukh and Faisal are going to be with me as part of the discussion. And for our first segment, we've been joined online by Brigadier retired Mr. Waqar Hassan, who's a senior journalist, and Mr. G.R. Baluch, who's a former ambassador. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the discussion today. And Ambassador Saab, let me start with you in terms of how we view this particular policy decision, first of all, in terms of the way that Pakistan, of course, has spoken about the kind of concerns that are in place, and the way that the illegal activity needs to be curbed, and for that a time frame has been given to all illegal foreign nationals in Pakistan, after which action is going to be taken in. Unfortunately, a lot of criticism is emerging from different quarters, particularly from Afghanistan as well, and it is being viewed as a policy decision that is perhaps affecting the Afghan foreign nationals in Pakistan more so than other people. And that might be true, but I want you to explain to us whether the criticism is also valid in terms of the kind of objectives and reasoning that Pakistan has for going ahead with this decision, particularly in terms of the security threats and the curbing of illegal activity within the country.
Sana, I think if we go back to the history, it will be too long. But to cut the history short, I think Pakistan has faced unprecedented security threats from such foreign nationals who have taken the advantage of some kind of a soft border that happened to exist between Afghanistan and Pakistan in the wake of so-called Afghan jihad. And my own personal view is that, first of all, we have to put a stop to that process of Afghan jihad in terms of what happens on our territory and in the thinking across the border and among the people. In fact, we as a country have seen and have actually faced the brunt of this terrorism. Just recently, we know there were two big blasts where like 40 or 50, and they were simultaneous, one after the other, and they were all soft targets, and they were all targets of the Muslims who were praying in the mosque. That undermines the sovereignty of the state. It shakes the confidence of the foreign investors. It shakes the confidence of the citizens about the state itself, whether the state can provide security or not. So I think for us, these incidents are much more vital as a state. And I think I, being a diplomat and believing in the international law, always say that we have to assert the inviolability of our borders, that our borders cannot be crossed by any alien without the permission, without the visa. And we know that hundreds and thousands of foreigners, including a big majority of Afghans, have crossed over. They have been taxing our ecology, they have been taxing our economy, they have been taxing our security, and in fact stability in the country. So if Pakistan government has decided that a stop has to come of such activity, the aliens, wherever they are from, obviously, as the spokesperson said, and you also reiterated, that we are not targeting, the government of Pakistan is not targeting any particular nationality or any particular country, but obviously the number is big for Afghanistan. So I think we have to make them understand the sensitivity. It's not good for Afghanistan as well, because Afghanistan itself is going through a turmoil. So I think it is in my view, the mutual interest of Afghanistan and Pakistan that no alien, whichever nationality he or she may be, should make use of comparatively soft border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So I think Pakistan has to put in place a very, very sturdy and a very, very efficient border management system on Pakistan-Afghanistan border, number one. On our diplomatic front, we have to convince our colleagues in Afghanistan, Kabul, to tell them what is the rationale behind it, what is the reason behind it, and of course, highlight the advantages that will accrue to Afghanistan itself. Now, of course, for us, it's very, very serious, but at the same time, also for Afghanistan. And for the region, as we know that non-state actors still are taking advantage of uh, of the Kabul or of Afghanistan today, where the writ of the state is yet not completely they are not in complete control of all the territories. There are still pockets of territory in Afghanistan which are being used by non-state actors of various colors and hues and nationalities. We don't have to reiterate them. So, in my view, this is a decision which is supported by the people of Pakistan. I've seen the comments, each segment of the society. I think this also has to be told to the international community, has to be made that it is not a singular decision of the government, but is a decision which actually emanates from the feelings of the people, sentiments of the people in the streets, in the villages, in the towns, where we see the aliens really threatening the security, encroaching upon the even the civic amenities that we have. Our cities are overwhelmed by these aliens. I'm talking of Karachi, for example, where I live. It's like it has become an impossible city in a way. And one of the reasons is the aliens, undocumented aliens from all over the world that you come across. So I think if this decision is a sound decision, should have been taken many years before, but if it has been taken, the government of Pakistan must stand by it, must not accept any pressure from any other country, neighboring country or non-neighboring country. And people of Pakistan stand by with the government on the decision, and we should go through and implement this decision, obviously keeping in view the humanitarian aspect. Yet, I think this decision has to be implemented because for us, the security of Pakistan, for us, the economy of Pakistan, for us, the border of Pakistan is much more valuable and cannot be compromised. Yes, sir.
Right, absolutely. Waqar Sahab, it is of course important to us that our security is not compromised, and of course, whatever goes on within the country is the responsibility of Pakistan, and to make sure that our borders are secure, that the people are secure, and of course, that we're able to provide a peaceful environment devoid of terrorist activities. Yet, at the same time, when we speak about the kind of commitments perhaps that are required from across the border from the Afghan Taliban regimes, it seems that there have been a lot of verbal reassurances. Similar reassurances have been given recently in the meetings between the two foreign ministers. However, there doesn't seem to be a lot of action on ground that supports those verbal assurances. And I want to understand then what then should be or is our plan B or our strategy, given the fact that the Afghan Taliban regime have not yet shown us that they are either willing or capable of actually moving ahead and supporting us. Do we have another strategy in mind?
Yeah, I think in terms of Afghanistan, although we're talking of aliens, but as I think what the ambassador said that most of them are Afghans. So now we are also focusing on Pak-Afghanistan border and what is coming from that side. In terms of leverages, I think there are 6 or 7 positive leverages Pakistan has. It has economic leverage, then you have Afghan transit trade, social demographic. Somebody said that actually Pakistan has become a strategic depth for Afghans because you need strategic depth, in distress. So if you are hosting closer to 5 million Afghans, so technically it's the other way around. Pakistan is their strategic depth, followed position, a transit route. And then of course is the grain going from here, then a lot of commodities. And within that, there are mafias which are working. And Pakistan has never used these leverages negatively. From the other side, I think it's not only the Taliban. I think if you look at Ashraf Ghani's government, or even before that, Ahmed Karzai, and even I think before that, the first Taliban regime, terrorism was used as a leverage. And then, of course, is the ability to play as a proxy to a hostile power against Pakistan. And also, I think we'll connect that there have been 2 superpower interventions, very, very important, which actually was 9 years for the Russians and or the Soviet Union. And then you had 2 decades of US occupation of Afghanistan. whatever reason. And Pakistan adjusted, in both cases to the international community's requirements because we were very responsible, we are very responsible state. Now it created actually four regime change, there's time we miss, and then four waves of immigrants. So, of course, if you look at history, the initial collapse of, Afghan under the Soviet Union, regime change again, Mujahideen coming up, and then you had Taliban, and now you had American, sponsored governments of Ashraf Ghani and Hamid Karzai. So there was every time the new elite was created in bureaucracy, in military, in businesses, and diplomacy. And now you have the fourth regime change, and it has actually almost dismantled the structure of governance, and Taliban are actually trying to now re-establish that. So that is also creating another wave, and I have the figures now. I think it's quoted from Stimson Center: 600,000 Afghan refugees, including those who were supposed to transit to US and Europe. And the promises they came to Pakistan. And the promises made were 2,71,000 European Union was supposed to absorb, and 250,000 plus was US, and then there were certain other Middle Eastern countries. And on ground, if you look at those who've been formally absorbed, they are pathetic numbers like 271 in case of European Union, and maybe a couple of thousand for the US. And the entire actually load came onto Pakistan, despite the assurances by international community. So I think that is very, very significant when you look at the problem of refugees and why Pakistan. I think the message is not only for Taliban government in Kabul, but also to the international community that they have to now bear the burden, and wherever they are destined, I think they should process it. Somebody remarked that in case the speed with which they are, let's say, trying to absorb the Afghans in Europe and America, it would take another decade, and I don't think so we can afford. Another important factor is the decisions in the Apex Committee, which have been, I think, promulgated. The statement by the Chief of Army Staff that life and honor of one Pakistani was, I think, more important than anybody's national interest outside Pakistan. So it could be now you're looking at, pressures coming from Afghanistan, like Zabiullah Mujahid, saying that probably we should delay it and accommodate it. I'll just, I think, through this forum, ask Mr. Zabiullah Mujahid very politely that why they have created an atmosphere of fear where, these 1.7 million Afghans staying in Pakistan are not ready to go back. That's the first question. So the prime responsibility of a state, if they consider that Afghanistan is a state, and they have established it of the government, the Afghani currency is doing very well, is to accommodate them. So I think that should be their prime responsibility. I'll just quote example from Fateh Makkah when Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came and Makkah was conquered. What was the example set? They were sworn enemies from Kufar Makkah. Everybody was pardoned, and look at how it changed. I think Taliban should actually adopt that, I think, tradition. And Pakistan has done it in terms of Mawahat. We have accommodated. And now the Afghan, let's say, immigrants are touching almost 5 million, very close to 5 million. Some people, I think, in KP think that maybe it is 6 million. So that is even more than, some of the populations of mid-sized countries in Europe. So I think all told, this is the perspective. Now, if you look at the effort, I think the decisions are very clear that they have to go back. There are also, issue of the SIFC because it's a matter of Pakistan's economic survival, and security is, of course, connected with that. Now, the refugees plus the mafias have created what I call Pakistan-Afghanistan mafia corridor, which is actually now, gnawing at the roots of Pakistan, economic survival. So it's, you've seen the dollar, $5 million were going to Afghanistan every day before the crackdown. And then you have sugar, and every time we are one of the largest producers of grains and sugar and these commodities. And here, we are suffering because it's for being smuggled. So I think there's going to be very tight border control. Even the message gone to, Frontier Corps and people who are responsible that there should be zero smuggling. And then, of course, are the mafias who will be sending, so there's going to be crackdown on that. So all told, I would say that SIFC faces the largest burden is this mafia, which is basically created because of the situation. And what is coming from the other side, despite our positive leverages, is terrorism. Despite assurances by their highest leaders, like I think Mullah Habatullah had issued a fatwa that there'll be no fighting across into any country, and specifically Pakistan. And I think even Sheikhul Azhar, described it as haram and considered them as basically out of Islam who are doing it. And I think Ambassador mentioned that if you attack procession like Eid Milad Nabi, I think that is very, very distressful, and it doesn't follow any principle of Islam, what TTP is
Right,
trying to do. So all told,
right.
I think we have to follow the decision.
Right, absolutely. Faisal, when we look at that situation, of course, and a number of these aspects are, of course, valid in terms of what is going on. But I want to then understand if we're talking about how obviously this is something that goes in the benefit of both the countries, and that this is something that we have leverage over as well, and then we have the ability perhaps to also be able to lobby and navigate and convince the Afghan Taliban regime. Why is it that we haven't yet been able to achieve that? Because at the same time, when we talk about all of these issues, whether or not they are actually beneficial for both the countries, there still doesn't seem to be that agreement, perhaps in perspective, from the Afghan Taliban regime, that this is something that they'll have to do as well in terms of a collective response. And if that's not there, then what use is the way that we are actually taking forward this issue?
Sana, if we look at the current situation, of course, since the day Taliban took the office back in 2021, since that day, of course, Pakistan has been, calm and having expectations from the other side. Of course, Pakistan's only goal is that for 20 years Pakistan had a had a sort of fear from the western border, which never existed before, and Pakistan constantly looked after that border as well. And of course, Pakistan believes that once there is no war in Afghanistan, the situation must be settled in a way that Pakistan's focus is not on the western border, rather it should be on the eastern border, because this is where the actual conflict was since the creation of Pakistan. So of course, expectations from the Pakistan side, they were there, and it was expected from the Taliban to, of course, do whatever they promised in the Doha Accord, including as Brigadier Waqar earlier mentioned, that they must not be letting their land to be used against any of the neighboring country, including Pakistan. But unfortunately, since the day one, we have been seeing that bordering provinces of Pakistan, they have been safe havens for the terrorists, they have been safe havens for the miscreants who've been creating troubles within Pakistan. For whatever the reason they have been doing it for, they have been doing it for, and the aspects which Pakistan required on the western border, they are not achieved so far. Of course, we should not be forgetting that India ignited its defensive offense, of course, using the western border of Pakistan, and still it gets used. And that is what Pakistan wants to break the chain about. And if we look at about the terrorists, of course, these people, these Afghans who are unaccounted for in Pakistan, they constantly get used for facilitations, for financings, for certain other things, and they are the ones who are actually doing it constantly without any hindrances. And here, of course, when Pakistan announces this in its own favor, its people's favor, suddenly we started getting, of course, the statements from the Afghan side, in which, of course, they are not ready to take them. One can suggest that, of course, they will be suffering in future if all of these people are sent home. Of course, they would have consequences in terms of economy, in terms of security, their own security at their home. So that is why they are, outcrying about it. But Sana, I just want to highlight one more thing, which earlier Brigadier Waqar rightly pointed out, and that was obviously related the fear factor. Of course, it is a responsibility of the Taliban since the day they took office in Kabul. It was their responsibility to eradicate that aspect of fear, to of course introduce the reconciliation process, which actually attracts all of their citizens elsewhere. I mean, Pakistan, in the Central Asian republics, or I'm talking about Iran, wherever their immigrants were settled or were, of course, hiding their faces there, they should have been, attracted to come back to their own country, because that's how they could progress. And I think this was the only chance they had, and he rightly highlighted this. And I am, I believe that this was the only solution to it. But somehow they knew that the problems which are created for other countries, once they get their own citizens back in their own country, of course, the same kind of problems they will be, catering in their home country as well. So that's what they don't want, because now they know that the problem which is being created, it's not their country, it's obviously Pakistan or Iran or wherever they create in troubles, they are creating troubles there. Over here, one aspect which must be highlighted is of UNHCR. I'm not saying that it's not doing enough, it must be doing enough. Of course, they are attracting the donors as well, and they are bringing money in, but of course that money is not enough to cater at a large number of Afghans. Probably they need to increase their fundings for Pakistan, because Pakistan is a fragile economy. It can't, of course, cater a large number of Afghans living in Pakistan, and a huge majority of them is unaccounted for. They are, a burden on Pakistan's economy. Pakistan's economy, of course, requires few steps, and one of them steps should be that UNHCR should be, asked to do more, as once we used to be asked by the countries who were holding Afghanistan in past. They used to ask us to do more. Now is the time that we must ask UNHCR to do more, and the countries who left Afghanistan hastily, they must understand that they had a responsibility towards the humanitarian cause as well, and that humanitarian cause requires them to, of course, help UNHCR, so that UNHCR can help Pakistan. If they want, of course, all of these laws, these new laws, to be a bit lighten up on the Afghan citizen or any other national citizens,
right,
then of course they have to do more.
Right, absolutely. And I want to understand, Farrukh, that there, of course, is a lot of response in terms of what is going on after this particular decision has been announced and after a deadline has been given. And it seems that there are a lot of opinions and a lot of options being given by organizations such as UNHCR and by, of course, Afghan Taliban regime and other quarters, talking about what Pakistan needs to be doing. But I want to then understand, why is it that the problem, that the kind of solutions that are being provided regarding the problem weren't given prior to such an action being taken or a policy decision being announced, if they were that easy and if that was the way that things should have been carried out? And secondly, in relation to the Afghan Taliban regime, how impactful do you think the meeting with the two foreign ministers can be, possibly given the current scenario of the kind of statements that are being given with the deadline given to the illegal Afghan nationals in Pakistan and others? And what sort of do you think measure then would this be counted as, in line with all of the rest of the actions that Pakistan has already taken? Will this in any way be able to perhaps change the perspective of the Afghan Taliban regime regarding this decision, and whether or not that in itself will change the way that we want to proceed with this decision?
Right, Sana, thank you very much. I think the first thing that UNHCR can do is not financial commitment, but accelerating the documentation of immigrants that are in Pakistan. I think their speed is so slow. There are few people here, Sana, and because of that, the documentation never takes place, which actually takes me to a couple of things that Brigadier Waqar actually mentioned, and I'm grateful that he did. One is SIFC. Pakistan is routinely pressured by IMF that Pakistan should be documenting its economy. when you have 1.1 or 1.4 million people that refuse to be documented, how exactly are you going to go about these things? They're part of the economy as well. Similarly, those people, not all of them, but at least a very small portion of them is also involved in criminal activities. Forget about terrorism, only focus on smuggling, only focus on the various robbery episodes and similar kind of black economy. Those things are also important. Similarly, Brigadier Saab mentioned two other aspects that are important. One, that somehow it seems that Pakistan has become a strategic depth for Afghan Taliban. And the other thing was regarding Zabiullah Mujahid's statement. So I understand why or how Afghan Taliban have actually achieved this feat, because it seems that even our media, when you look at the way this Apex committee was portrayed on television, and by the way, Apex committee took note of the media's coverage as well, and how media should be focusing on these matters. But our media also, instead of being force multiplier for state of Pakistan, seems to be force multiplier for Afghan Taliban. Afghan Taliban have very interesting history. Constantly, I'm sure that had similar kind of antics been adopted by Ashraf Ghani or Hamid Karzai, our media would have been out with a pitchfork and axes. But right now, whenever Afghan Taliban do something, we have this lingering sympathy that they are good people. And that's why what happens is amazing. What happens is that every time they do something wrong, we are told that we are wrong, and they might be right. I don't know why this impression is there that they are sympathetic to Pakistan. They did precious little when they were in government the first time. They were a liability, international liability for Pakistan. They could not formalize Durand line. They kept on hiding our terrorists even then of Lashkar-e-Jhangvi. Our interior minister actually flew to Afghanistan back in 2000. And at that time also they refused to hand over Riaz Basra to Pakistan, right? This is one aspect. This time also they're doing the same thing. Faisal spoke about something very interesting. Faisal said that, India's defensive offensive the strategy might be at play in Afghanistan. That is true. I tell you, there is a tell. TTP is not the only body that is in Afghanistan. ETIM and IMU are there also. But recently they have consolidated themselves into one political party that is called TIP, which is Turkestan Islamic Party. And now you know that Turkestan Islamic Party is essentially focused on China. And of course, India is said to be behind this move. So if that the Afghan Taliban are working so closely with Indian agencies, then we cannot have this harbor this illusion that somehow they are Pakistan's allies. And that is why every time an attack takes place, and I'm talking about the assassination of two Pakistanis today as well, these things are cause for concern. So any mitigation effort between two foreign ministers might be okay. It might produce some results, but it cannot change the direction in which Afghan Taliban are going, and we'll have to take stock of our own internal matters. If we have to indeed deport, and by the way, one more thing, regarding the international commitment to recent refugees who might be staying in Pakistan on the promise that European Union or America actually committed to taking them abroad. If that is so, there must be some kind of documentation or some proof of the concept. If there isn't, then we can repatriate them. But if there is a proof of such promise, then we'll have to be very careful. We will not be able to send them back because somehow we are caught in the middle of this. We'll have to speak to the Western allies as well to take responsibility. But before that, it causes more problem for this whole exercise of bringing people back to Afghanistan.
Right. Ambassador Saab, the meeting between the two foreign ministers have also the discussion has also centered around the organizations that are affecting terrorist activities in Pakistan, including the TTP, and we've had different analysts and experts on Afghan affairs speak about the fact that the TTP may be a Pakistan problem, and that is something that is a threat that is emanating from Pakistan, and that we'll have to deal with it on our own. And also that because of the association that exists between the TTP and the Afghan Taliban regime, it is reluctant to provide the kind of commitment that Pakistan is looking for, and so will not be able to take away the safe havens that exist in the country for them. I want to then understand that whatever sort of way that we can sort of try and paint the picture in a way that is good and essential for Afghanistan to also extend support in these matters, and that there is international obligation. There is, of course, a matter of recognition that still remains, and others, including the way that it's going to potentially progress and grow in the future. Do you think that all of this will still be outnumbered or outweighed in a way by the way that this brotherhood perhaps exists, and that the Afghan Taliban regime may not be able to escape this sort of ideological association?
Yeah, I think the TTP, the synergy between TTP and Afghan Taliban is not a secret anymore. We know the ideological affinity between the two segments of the regime as well as TTP. So that remains a factor which we must keep in our mind when we are approaching Afghanistan or we are approaching TTP. That is very important. But let me come back to the decision. This decision of sending the Afghan refugees back to Afghanistan is one of the historical decisions that we have taken. So I would take this advantage here to say that this decision has to be backed up, number one, by the people of Pakistan. It has to be owned by the people of Pakistan, the media. Most importantly, I think the government must sort of reach out to all the political parties in Pakistan. And I want to see tomorrow or day after tomorrow the statement of all the major political parties supporting this decision, number one. Number two, what can be done is that Ministry of Foreign Affairs must convene a meeting of the ambassadors, the important ambassadors, maybe of OIC as well as the European Union and the Western in 2 or 3 segments, and tell them the rationale of our this decision. And then our ambassadors in different capitals must also activate themselves. So all of this will give us a support, and then the voice of this, although because there is a handicap with this government because it's an interim government. So, but to counter that handicap is important for us that all these forces have to combine together and convey a very strong message to the Afghanistan that Pakistan is united on this factor. And when we move on from this on, it will be easy for us to leverage a negotiation with them and talk to them that they have to put a stop to the TTP activities against Pakistan. They have to close their financing. They have to close their training centers there. They have to close their recruitment processes. So I think there's a whole gamut that has to go through it. But I think we'll have this, in my view, even this decision, if it is implemented, will have an enormous impact on our further negotiations with the Taliban. They probably would try to leverage otherwise, but I think we must stick to the decision and then move on from there to discuss all those irritants that we have in Afghanistan. But it's very important. The day has come. We have to decide. Yes, please.
All right. Brigadier Waqar, the recent incident that we have seen at the Chaman border crossing is also, of course, something that raises concerns. And we've seen that happen last year as well and previously as well. And given the way that there has been unprovoked and indiscriminate firing, it of course points towards the kind of irresponsibility that exists, but then also points towards the kind of inaction that is also there in terms of the Afghan Taliban regime ensuring border security mechanisms to be in place, and then also to be able to prevent such attacks, and also then to investigate them properly. None of this seems to be happening, and of course the soldiers on our side have exercised great restraint in not responding to such an attack, but we have lost precious lives unfortunately still in this tragic incident. And so when we talk about stricter border mechanisms and to be able to put more effective strategies in place, how then are we able to counter such attacks as well, in which we see an irresponsible statement or action being given with response to something that has cost us our lives?
I think it has to be moving in two domains. One is, of course, Pakistan's own response is border control and then communicating. And mind you, we have an option of going across the border also, which was not exercised. Turkey does it. You know, there was a bomb blast in Ankara, and they just went and struck the terrorist hideouts. So Pakistan has the capability also, but there was an restraint, as in case of, I think, Chaman crossing. So it's condemnable. The other is, I think, the diplomacy. I think one important factor was the Moscow format. I'll just take a while, which was on 30th of September, in which the immediate periphery of Afghanistan, including Pakistan, Iran, Russia, China, and Central Asian republics, and the outer periphery, including Turkey, Middle East country like UAE, KSA, and Qatar. So I think the ultimate message, and Mr. Muttaqi was there, was to dismantle the militant groups and terrorist outfits. Now, why I think they are feeling is that there is a chance that in case Afghanistan they had, I think Afghanistan had 3 months back a skirmish with Iran on the Iranian border of Iran as well, which I think some of the Iranian border guards will, martyred. So if they keep doing it and the state starts collapsing from within, so there is a fear, I think, in the region that now you'll have a fifth wave of immigrants, which will be economic immigrants, and whatever goodwill Taliban are trying to build will actually start collapsing the state. So I think there's a lot of pressure from the region as well. Now the West is also realizing that they have to walk the talk. But most important is that Taliban have to walk the talk. You look at the, decree given by Mullah Habatullah, if it's not being followed, I think there's an oath of allegiance between TTP and the supreme leader of Afghanistan. And in case he puts his foot down and makes sure that all the ministries and border control people are there to implement it, I think it will make a major change. Then I think they've also arrested 200, I think, people from the northern states which were trying to attack Pakistan, and they have been arrested. So there are some I think gestures, but still I think ultimately Afghanistan has to walk the talk. Otherwise, in this time, when we are in the third decade of 21st century, you cannot become an island within the international community. They talk of these corridors, north, south, east, west, and I think Central Asia region, the SCO, everybody is worried that in case this keeps on going, so it will not, if you start affecting the regional economy. I'll just also like to highlight the Indian hypocrisy. Now, in terms of refugees, there are only 15,000, and just before the American withdrawal, India came out with a law disbanding any Muslim immigrants, because they could feel that ultimate way will be they have to share certain burden of Afghan refugees as well. So this is kind of hypocrisy. The Afghan embassy in Delhi has been shut down because they could not post their ambassador. So I think this is also kind of message to the Taliban government that in case they start behaving like that, yes, China has tried to engage them diplomat. Pakistan is one of the fewer countries we have definitely diplomatic, and we would like to communicate. But I think there'll be a lot of diplomatic pressure, and the way I think Apex Committee has taken decisions, we have to basically, it's a matter of Pakistan's own survival. So it cannot be at the cost of others.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Right. Thank you very much, Brigadier Waqar Hassan for joining Waqar Hassan Khan for joining us. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and thank you very much, Mr. G.R. Baluch, for also joining us and being part of the discussion. Of course, it remains to be seen what happens as part of the strategy moving forward. But what the Foreign Office spokesperson has also talked about is the ICC Cricket World Cup that is happening in India, and the problems in visa issuance, which of course our journalists and spectators are witnessing. Faisal, the situation, of course, perhaps may be expected, but then again, this is an international forum, it's sports, and it's something that needs to be respected, and our journalists and spectators have the right to go and attend the matches. What's the problem here, and how can it be fixed?
Sana, not only the journalist, of course, the hypocrisy starts long before this. Of course, we know that in the Asia Cup, the way India dealt with Pakistan, they just exhausted Pakistan's team. Pakistan's team was traveling from here to there to play their own matches, and Pakistan's team was exhausted, and that's how they tackled with the Pakistan factor in the Asia Cup. And then later on, what happened? Pakistan wanted to go to Dubai before Pakistan goes for the World Cup, just because they wanted to have few of their matches to, of course, prepare themselves. They were keeping their passports, and they did not put the visas on so that Pakistan can easily go to Dubai for playing their own matches. So for going to India, the visas they gave very late so that Pakistan doesn't go anywhere before going to the World Cup. So when Pakistan teams goes there, of course, after that, journalists, they have been applying for the visas, and so many of them journalists, they did not get visa. If they did get the visas, I mean, few of them they received today, or they are going to do it tomorrow, and they are so late to reach out there. This is how India is playing with Pakistan. And one thing I want to mention, Sana, you might have seen footages from the World Cup opening ceremony today. Farrukh, you might have seen them as well. There were very less number of the people present in that stadium, which is considered as the biggest stadium of the world of cricket. Right. And of course, it's called Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and this is where it took place, and there were empty chairs.
Right, absolutely. And Faisal, that's important, but I don't know if this is something that is important outside of Pakistan as well. I understand, Farrukh, that even certain foreign media agencies and journalists that are Pakistani nationals are also not being given their visa. So the discrimination is pretty obvious, but the kind of impact that perhaps we should have seen is not there.
Right, Sanam. I think that before I'm shifted to the main camera and then we start zooming out, I just wanted to say, what do you expect? This is BJP's government. They have been actually, their hardened positions, their confusing stances, their extremism has been bringing it to their country. So I didn't expect anything different, and we'll have to wait this out. I don't think that the BJP is going to last, the government is going to last beyond to the 2024. So let's see what happens.
All right. Of course, this is something that we hope does change, and that we're able to see a difference, especially given that this is something that, as the Foreign Office spokesperson has said, is related to sports and should be away from political rivalry. Whether or not that happens, of course, with India is still a question mark, but we wish the best of luck to our team, and of course hope our fans and our journalists get to see it in person. That's all that we have from the debate. Thank you, Farrukh. Thank you, Faisal, for joining us.
Thank you.